Mother gave her clothes to save kids in blizzard. Hours later, 500 Hell's Angels hunted down the small town of Pine Ridge had always been known for its quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and snow that dusted the rooftops every winter like a soft, white blanket. People often joked that the town was too calm, too ordinary, but the residents loved it that way. Life moved slowly here. The children played in backyards, bundled in colorful winter jackets, while parents shoveled snow from driveways and exchanged greetings across fences. It was a town where everyone knew everyone else, and nothing ever really shook its rhythm. But that winter was different. The weather reports had warned of a storm coming from the north, but most of the townspeople believed it would be like every other winter storm, intense for a few hours, then gone. Laura, a mother of two, had been listening to the reports on her small radio while preparing breakfast. Her children, Emma, age 6, and Luke, age 4, were busy playing with building blocks on the living room floor, completely oblivious to the world outside. Laura loved these moments. She treasured the sound of their laughter, the way Luke would giggle uncontrollably when Emma knocked over his towers. It was ordinary, peaceful, and full of warmth. By late morning, the wind had begun to pick up, rattling windows and whistling through the cracks in the old wooden frames of their home. Laura paused, feeling a chill creep up her spine. She walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall, light at first, dancing slowly toward the ground. But in minutes, the flurries turned heavier. Snow whipped against the windows, blurring the outlines of the houses across the street. The wind howled as if it carried a warning. Laura's heart tightened. She knew the town's roads were already icy and that the storm could become dangerous quickly. She gathered her children in the kitchen, wrapped them in scarves and extra sweaters, and prepared hot cocoa. She tried to reassure herself as much as she reassured them. "It's just snow, kids, just snow. We'll stay inside warm and cozy," she said, forcing a calm smile. Emma and Luke nodded, trusting her completely, as children often do. By early afternoon, the blizzard hit in full force. The snow was relentless now, piling up quickly, covering the sidewalks and streets. The wind was no longer a playful whistle, but a sharp, cutting force that rattled every corner of their house. Trees bent under the weight of the snow, and branches creaked ominously. Laura watched the world outside shrink into a swirling wall of white. She could barely see the mailbox at the end of the driveway. Panic began to creep into her chest. The power flickered once, twice, and then went out entirely, plunging the house into a gray, shadowy gloom. Laura quickly lit candles, placing them carefully on the tables to give some light. She gathered blankets and extra clothing from the closets, layering them over the children as the room grew colder by the minute. Her own sweater did little to protect her from the chill that seeped into the house. The heating system, old and unreliable, had stopped working halfway through the storm. Laura shivered, hugging herself, but she knew she had to stay strong for her children. Hours passed, and the snow showed no sign of stopping. Laura's mind raced with worry. She thought about the news reports warning of record-low temperatures, about families who had been trapped in their homes before, about the possibility of roads becoming impassable. The cold was becoming more than just uncomfortable. It was dangerous. She watched Emma and Luke huddled together under layers of blankets, their little faces pale and their lips turning pink. She knew she couldn't let them suffer. Every mother's instinct screamed at her to do whatever it took to keep them safe. And then she made a decision. It was a choice that tested every ounce of her courage. Laura began removing her own layers of clothing, taking off sweaters, jackets, even her scarf to wrap around her children. She shivered violently as the freezing wind and icy air pressed into the house through the tiny gaps in the windows and doors, but she refused to let the children feel it. She tucked thick layers around them, covering their arms and legs, making sure no skin was exposed. Emma and Luke looked up at her with sleepy eyes, unaware of the sacrifice their mother was making. Laura moved like a soldier in a mission, precise and determined. She used every piece of clothing she could find, socks, gloves, scarves, even her thick winter coat, to shield her children. She layered blankets on top of them, piled cushions around their small bodies, and even moved furniture in front of drafty windows. Her own shivering grew worse, but she ignored it. The sound of her teeth chattering and the ache in her bones faded into the background. Nothing mattered more than keeping Emma and Luke warm and alive. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. The wind outside roared like a wild beast, snow piling higher against the walls of the house. Laura's lips were blue, her fingers numb, but she never let the children see her pain. She whispered stories to them, stories of magical lands and brave heroes, just to keep their minds off the cold. Luke held tightly to a blanket-trapped bundle, murmuring, "Mommy, I'm warm now." Emma smiled faintly, eyes drooping with sleep. Laura forced a smile back at them, feeling a pang in her heart. They were warm, yes, but she herself was suffering. Her muscles ached, her teeth chattered constantly, and every breath felt sharp in her freezing chest. The storm outside seemed endless. Every hour that passed made Laura more aware of the dangers. She knew that if they weren't careful, frostbite could set in, or worse, hypothermia. But she also knew that panic would not help. She had to think clearly, act quickly, and stay calm. Every instinct she had as a mother told her to endure the pain, to sacrifice herself for the sake of her children. The wind shook the house, rattling the windows and doors, but Laura held them closed, using heavy furniture to block the drafts. She repeated over and over in her mind, "They have to survive, they have to survive." By evening, the storm reached its peak. The snow outside piled so high that it was nearly impossible to see the yard, and the wind gusts carried sharp needles of ice that could cut through exposed skin. Laura wrapped the children in the final layers of clothing and blankets she could find. She even used her own coat as a shield over their heads while they slept. The shivering from exhaustion and cold made her weak, but she stayed awake, whispering reassurances, checking their breathing, and adjusting blankets. She refused to let herself fall asleep because sleep could mean danger. As the night wore on, the storm showed no mercy. Snow fell in thick, heavy sheets, covering rooftops and roads alike. Trees groaned under the weight of ice and snow, and the town's familiar sounds, the hum of electricity, the distant barking of dogs, the chatter of neighbors, were all replaced by the relentless howl of the wind. Laura imagined what the world outside must look like. Cars buried, streets empty, neighbors trapped in their homes. Fear and worry gnawed at her, but she pressed on, refusing to give in. Hours turned into an endless stretch of survival. Laura's body was numb in places, and her teeth ached from chattering, but she continued to shield her children from the cold. She moved blankets, adjusted clothing, and whispered stories and songs to keep them distracted. The children clung to her, unaware of how much she was enduring, only knowing that they were safe in their mother's arms. Finally, just before dawn, the storm seemed to ease slightly. The wind lost some of its bite, and the snow fell more gently, though the world outside was still buried under a thick white blanket. Laura, exhausted beyond measure, allowed herself a moment to breathe. She looked at Emma and Luke, sleeping soundly, their small faces peaceful. Tears pricked at her eyes, not from pain, but from relief and overwhelming love. She had survived the night, and so had they, because she had given everything she could. Neighbors would later tell stories of seeing Laura in the night, moving through the storm like a guardian angel, her own body trembling yet wholly focused on her children. They would speak of the courage it took to sacrifice oneself for the safety of others, of a mother's love so powerful it could fight even the fiercest storm. But for Laura, it wasn't about heroism. It was about survival, about love, and about doing whatever it took to protect the little lives she had brought into the world. The morning light finally broke through the clouds, casting a pale glow over the snow-covered town. Laura's home, though battered by the storm, stood strong. Her children woke to find themselves warm and safe, wrapped in layers of clothing that belonged to their mother. They would never understand fully the sacrifice she had made, but in their hearts, they knew they were loved beyond measure. And Laura, shivering but smiling, felt a deep sense of quiet triumph. She had faced the storm, and she had won not for herself, but for the two small lives that mattered most in the world. The storm had finally slowed, leaving the world outside a silent, frozen wasteland. Snow blanketed every street, roof, and tree, turning the town into a white, almost unrecognizable place. The wind had softened to occasional gusts, but the danger was far from over. Roads remained impassable, power lines were down, and the cold continued to bite with unforgiving force. Laura, exhausted from the previous night's ordeal, was determined not to let her children fall into danger again. She moved cautiously through her house, checking each room to make sure there were no drafts or leaks she had missed the night before. The children were still sleeping, huddled under layers of blankets and clothes that Laura had wrapped around them, and she couldn't help but smile despite the fatigue. Their faces, pale but peaceful, were a stark reminder of why she had endured the freezing storm. Laura quietly tidied the living room, straightening blankets and moving furniture to block any remaining cold air that crept in. Every small action mattered in these conditions. Even a slight chill could put her children at risk. Outside, the town had transformed into a chaotic scene. Snowdrifts blocked driveways, and abandoned cars were half buried in ice and snow. The few neighbors brave enough to venture outside moved slowly, carrying shovels and buckets of sand to clear the walkways. Some helped push cars stuck in the ice, while others checked on elderly residents who were stranded in their homes. Laura could hear muffled voices from behind snow-laden windows, neighbors calling to each other, offering updates and small reassurances. It was a town trying to survive, each person doing what they could in the face of nature's fury. But as Laura worked inside, a new sense of unease began to creep into her mind. While the storm had left the roads empty and the town quiet, she had heard faint, distant sounds that didn't belong to the blizzard. The muffled hum of engines, faint at first, grew steadily louder. Laura paused, listening intently, a shiver running down her spine. Something was coming. She didn't yet know who or what it was, but instinct told her to be alert. Her children's safety was her only priority, and she would not take any chances. Hours passed, and the sound of engines became unmistakable. Laura peeked cautiously through a small gap in the curtains, and what she saw made her heart skip a beat. A line of motorcycles, almost 100 of them, appeared through the snow-covered streets, moving steadily toward the center of town. Their engines roared, breaking the stillness of the post-storm morning. Laura's mind raced. She had heard rumors about groups of outsiders known to patrol nearby towns, the Hells Angels, but she had never imagined they would appear in Pine Ridge, especially during a blizzard. Fear surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would do no good, and she needed every ounce of clarity to protect her children. She quickly began preparing. Windows were reinforced with heavy furniture. Blankets were tucked tightly around the children, creating layers of warmth and protection. Laura even barricaded the door with a sturdy table she had pulled from the dining room, hoping to slow down any unwanted visitors. Her hands shook from cold and fear, but her mind remained sharp. Every decision could mean the difference between safety and disaster. The first motorcycles reached the main street, their riders moving methodically, scanning the houses as they went. Laura held her breath, pressing herself against the wall to stay out of view. She could hear the crunch of tires against ice, the faint muttering of voices, and the occasional bark of a dog scared by the sudden intrusion. The sound of the engines was terrifying, a mechanical growl that made the storm seem like a distant memory. Laura knew she couldn't simply wait this out. She had to take action to keep her family safe. She quickly gathered supplies. Candles and lanterns were positioned strategically to create shadows and distractions, giving the illusion of movement or presence in other parts of the house. Heavy blankets were hung over windows, and furniture was arranged to block possible entry points. Laura even pulled out extra clothes from closets, adding more layers around the children. Her own body was shivering violently, but she ignored it. She could feel frostbite beginning to creep into her fingers, but she refused to let that stop her. The children were warm, and that was all that mattered. Time dragged on as she listened to the motorcycles move through the streets. The bikers seemed to be searching, stopping occasionally to peer into windows and check doors. Laura's heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could hear it. She whispered to her children, softly, just enough to reassure them without making a sound that could be heard outside. "Everything is okay, my loves. Mommy's here." "We'll be safe," she murmured, hoping that her voice would carry some comfort into their dreams. Emma stirred slightly, hugging a blanket closer, while Luke whispered, "Mommy, are we okay?" Laura pressed a finger to his lips, smiling despite her fear, and whispered, "Yes, baby. We are okay, just stay quiet and safe." Outside, the Hells Angels were methodical. It was clear they were looking for something, or someone, but Laura couldn't tell if they meant harm or simply wanted to assert their presence. Their reputation in nearby towns was enough to make any mother nervous, especially one alone in a house with two small children. She thought of the news stories she had read about similar groups, how they could intimidate entire communities. But she also knew that fear was a tool she could not afford to give them. Her focus remained laser-sharp on keeping her children hidden and warm. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity. The bikers moved from street to street, occasionally stopping to speak to one another in low, gravelly voices. Laura could hear fragments of their conversation, words like search, check all houses, and make sure no one escapes. Every sound tightened the knot of worry in her chest. She wondered how long it would take before they reached her street, before her home became the center of their attention. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her like never before. This was not just a storm anymore. It was a test of courage, quick thinking, and survival. As the day wore on, Laura noticed something remarkable. The children, despite the fear and tension, remained calm, trusting completely in their mother's presence. Emma held Luke's hand and they whispered soft reassurances to each other. Laura's heart swelled with pride. Her actions, every layer of clothing, every blanket, every improvised barricade, were keeping them safe. And yet she knew that this was only the beginning. The bikers could spend hours searching, and she needed to be ready for anything. She began thinking of strategies. If the bikers discovered her home, how could she protect her children? She remembered small spaces under furniture, closets, and other hidden areas where they could be temporarily shielded. She prepared multiple options, rotating blankets and cushions to create the illusion of a room already full or occupied. Every corner of her home became part of a defensive plan. Laura's mind, despite exhaustion and cold, worked with the precision of someone trained for emergencies. Her survival instinct, combined with maternal love, became a force that would not be broken. The hours passed slowly, but the bikers began to move farther away from her immediate area. Laura didn't know if it was luck or careful planning that kept them at a distance, but she refused to relax. She continued to check on the children, keeping them fed with small snacks, offering warm sips of water, and maintaining as much normalcy as possible. She whispered stories, sang gentle songs, and reassured them that they would soon be safe. Her presence, calm and steady, became the anchor in a day filled with uncertainty and fear. Late in the afternoon, the storm's remnants finally began to ease completely. The wind softened, the snow settled, and the town started to take on its familiar shape beneath the thick white blanket. Laura allowed herself a moment to look outside, assessing the scene. The bikers were no longer visible, though she knew it was only temporary. They could return or another group could follow. She had to remain vigilant. Yet in that brief moment a flicker of hope appeared. Perhaps the worst was over, at least for now. Laura's children began to stir more fully, stretching and yawning, their small bodies still wrapped in layers of blankets. They were safe for the moment, and Laura felt a wave of relief wash over her. She knew the storm had tested her in ways she had never imagined, and the new threat outside reminded her that courage often required not just endurance but constant vigilance. She promised herself silently that she would do whatever it took to protect her children, no matter what dangers lay ahead. Neighbors would later speak of Laura's heroism in hushed, amazed tones. They described a woman who had not only survived a powerful storm, but had done so while shielding her children from the cold and danger outside. They told stories of a mother who had prepared her home, used her wits, and refused to succumb to fear, keeping her children safe in a world that had suddenly become unpredictable and threatening. For Laura, it wasn't about recognition or praise. It was about survival, about love, and about the unwavering determination that comes from knowing that someone else's life depends entirely on your own courage and quick thinking. The children slept soundly, and Laura, though exhausted, felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced nature and human unpredictability, and she had done what every mother would do. She had protected her children at all costs. The morning after the blizzard had left Pine Ridge in a frozen silence, Laura tried to catch her breath. The world outside was still buried under deep snow, and the temperature remained dangerously low. Yet, despite the storm's passing, a new unease gnawed at her. She had glimpsed the distant roar of engines the previous day, and her instincts told her that the danger had not disappeared with the storm. There were forces at work beyond nature, forces that might reach her home and threaten the fragile safety she had worked so hard to maintain. By mid-morning, the distant hum of engines returned, stronger and closer this time. Laura's heart thumped in her chest as she peered through the frosted window. A long line of motorcycles emerged from the outskirts of town, their chrome gleaming even under a pale winter sun. It was unmistakable, hundreds of riders, moving with precision and intent. These were the outsiders she had feared, the bikers known in whispers across neighboring towns, the Hell's Angels. Laura's stomach twisted. She had survived the storm, kept her children alive and warm, but now they faced a threat that no blanket or layer of clothing could guard against. Laura acted quickly. She moved silently through the house, her bare feet pressing against the icy floor. Every movement was deliberate, every sound calculated. She began barricading doors with heavy furniture, stacking chairs and tables to block entry. Windows, which had already been reinforced against the cold, were now covered with thick blankets, creating the illusion that the house was empty. Every detail mattered. She knew that the bikers were methodical, that they would check every corner, and that even a small mistake could put her children at risk. Emma and Luke were still in bed, their small bodies wrapped tightly in layers of blankets. Laura whispered softly to them, her voice steady despite the fear threatening to break her. "Stay quiet, my loves. Mommy is right here. Nothing will hurt you. Just stay under the blankets and we'll be safe." The children's eyes widened in sleepy confusion, sensing the urgency in their mother's voice, but they obeyed without question. Laura kissed their foreheads, feeling a deep surge of love and determination. She had faced the storm and survived. She would face this threat too and do everything in her power to protect them. Outside, the bikers were unmistakably organized. They moved down streets in groups, scanning houses with sharp eyes. Their engines roared through the still air, a mechanical growl that seemed to shake the snow-laden rooftops. Some stopped to speak in low, hushed voices, their words carrying over the wind. "Check all houses. Make sure no one is hiding. Don't leave a trace." The tension in Laura's chest tightened. She realized that their search was thorough, calculated, and relentless. There would be no room for error. Laura had to think fast. She pulled out blankets, pillows, and any soft furniture she could use to create decoys, making it appear as if someone was moving or occupying different parts of the house. Chairs were stacked in odd formations, blankets draped in unusual ways, and rugs were arranged to hide footprints in the icy floor. Every action was designed to confuse the intruders, to buy her time, and to protect her children. Her hands shook from cold and tension, but she refused to let fear take control. Survival demanded clear thinking, and Laura's mind, sharpened by the previous night's ordeal, worked tirelessly. Hours passed, and the bikers moved systematically from house to house. Laura's strategy seemed to be working. They peeked into windows, tried doors, and muttered to one another, but they did not immediately discover her home. Laura kept her children close, whispering stories to them in soft, calming tones to distract them from the distant sounds of engines and voices. Emma held Luke's hand, their small fingers entwined as they listened to their mother's voice, drawing comfort and courage from her presence. Despite her efforts, Laura knew the threat was not over. She could hear conversations outside, voices low but distinct, and realized that the bikers were closing in. One of them approached her street, stopping to scan the houses carefully. Laura's heart raced. Every breath she took seemed loud in the otherwise silent house. She whispered to her children again, "We're okay, my loves, just stay under the blankets. Mommy's right here." Their small nods reassured her, giving her the strength to continue. The bikers' tactics became more persistent. They began knocking on doors in other houses, trying to lure residents out. Laura watched from behind the curtains, calculating her next moves. She knew that if they discovered her, she would need an escape plan, a way to keep the children safe even if the worst happened. She identified potential hiding places in the house, under tables, behind curtains, even small crawl spaces in closets. Each location was stocked with blankets and cushions, ready to conceal the children at a moment's notice. As the day wore on, Laura realized that she needed more than hiding spots. She needed distractions. She moved cautiously to the front of the house, placing several lanterns near windows, their flames flickering in the cold wind. The light created moving shadows, giving the illusion of presence in other rooms. She shifted furniture slightly, creating sounds that could suggest movement elsewhere. Every detail mattered. She knew that the bikers would check every possible hiding spot, and every trick she could use might save precious minutes or hours. The hours stretched into an endless ordeal. Laura remained vigilant, her body stiff from cold and lack of rest. She whispered encouragements to herself, reminding herself why she was doing this. Her children's safety depended entirely on her courage and ingenuity. Emma and Luke were quiet now, still partially asleep, but aware that something was happening. Laura kept them calm, stroking their hair and holding their hands, ensuring that fear did not take root in their hearts. By late afternoon, the bikers' presence became more pronounced. Their engines roared closer, and they moved in coordinated groups, as if following a carefully planned search pattern. Laura could hear them stopping occasionally to speak to one another, their voices low but firm, discussing houses, routes, and possible hiding places. She knew that the window of safety was narrowing. Her mind raced through every possible scenario. If they found the house, she would need to act quickly. She mentally rehearsed hiding spots, escape routes, and ways to keep the children calm under extreme pressure. Despite the tension, Laura noticed something remarkable. The children were absorbing her calm, her courage, and her determination. Emma whispered, "Mommy, I'm not scared," while Luke held tight to a pillow, murmuring, "I trust you, Mommy." Their trust strengthened her resolve. She realized that her own fear could not show. Her children needed her strength, and she had to provide it, no matter the cost. The bond between mother and children became a silent but powerful shield against the encroaching threat outside. The bikers moved past her immediate area, and Laura breathed a cautious sigh of relief. She knew it was temporary. The group could return or send scouts, but for the moment her home remained undiscovered. She used this reprieve to check on the children, offer small sips of water, and whisper stories that made them laugh softly, despite the tension. She reminded them that they were safe and that she would do everything in her power to keep it that way. Every small moment of normalcy became a lifeline for their spirits. As evening approached, Laura realized that the situation required preparation for the night. She reinforced barricades again, layered blankets more tightly, and double-checked all possible hiding places. The temperature was dropping again, and the approaching darkness could give the bikers an advantage if they returned. Laura's body was numb, her muscles aching, and her teeth chattered with cold, but she refused to give in. Survival demanded vigilance, courage, and unwavering determination. In the quiet moments, Laura reflected on the events of the past day. The storm had tested her endurance, but the bikers' arrival tested her strategy, courage, and mental strength. She realized that love was her greatest weapon. The bond between her and her children gave her a strength she had never known before. It allowed her to endure the cold, the fear, and the uncertainty, and it gave her clarity to act decisively in a situation where mistakes could be costly. By nightfall, the bikers had moved on for the time being, but Laura remained alert. She kept the children close, monitored the house for drafts, and whispered gentle songs and stories to soothe them. Sleep came in short, interrupted bursts, but she remained ever watchful. The day had been long, exhausting, and terrifying, yet she had kept her children safe. She had faced not only the blizzard but the shadow of human danger, and she had emerged resilient, determined, and unbroken. Neighbors would later recall seeing Laura in those hours, moving silently, calculating every action, and protecting her children with an almost supernatural focus. They spoke in awe of her courage, of her ability to face danger head-on, and of the calm determination that kept her family safe in the most threatening circumstances. For Laura, it was never about recognition. It was about love, survival, and the extraordinary lengths a mother would go to protect her children from harm. The night passed, and Laura stayed vigilant, knowing that more challenges could lie ahead. She had endured the blizzard and the threat of the bikers, but she was prepared to face anything. The children slept, warm and safe under layers of blankets, while Laura remained alert, guarding them with her presence, her strategies, and her unyielding courage. Night fell over Pine Ridge, blanketing the town in a quiet darkness that seemed almost complete after the chaos of the past 2 days. The blizzard had passed, leaving streets and rooftops covered in thick snow, and the distant hum of engines that Laura had feared so much earlier in the day had faded. Yet the air remained tense. Laura knew that the storm had not only brought danger but also left the town vulnerable. She could not relax, not yet. Her children, Emma and Luke, were nestled under thick blankets, their small bodies finally calm after a day filled with fear and uncertainty. Laura sat quietly in the living room, exhausted but alert, her mind racing through every possible scenario. Despite the fatigue, she refused to let her guard down. The Hells Angels had not been fully seen since their earlier search, but their presence still hung like a shadow over the town. Laura knew that they were organized, experienced, and unpredictable. She kept her ears tuned to every creak, every whisper of wind, and every faint sound outside, ready to act at a moment's notice. Her eyes darted to the barricaded doors and covered windows, checking for gaps, loose blankets, or any signs that the outside world might breach her sanctuary. Laura understood that she could not face such a large group alone if they discovered her home. She needed help, but she had to be smart about it. She remembered the emergency numbers, the community networks, and the local authorities. With careful planning, she had previously sent messages to her neighbors during the day, informing them of her situation without alerting the bikers. Some had responded, confirming that the two were sheltering in their homes, trapped by snow or fear of the bikers. Laura realized she could not wait passively. She needed to make a move, but only when it was safe. The children stirred slightly, sensing her tension. Emma looked at her mother and whispered, "Mommy, are they gone?" Laura forced a small smile and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Yes, my love, they are gone for now, but we must stay careful. Everything will be all right," she replied softly. Luke, still clutching a pillow, nodded, his wide eyes reflecting both fear and trust. Laura's heart ached with love and relief. The bond between mother and children had carried them through the storm and the threat that followed, and it would continue to guide them through the night. As the night deepened, Laura's instincts told her that rescue might arrive sooner than expected. The town's emergency services had been active despite the storm, and she knew that neighbors and authorities were slowly mobilizing to restore safety. She kept the children close, whispering comforting stories and songs to calm their nerves, while also scanning the house for any signs of intrusion. Her attention to detail was meticulous. She checked locks, reinforced weak points, and adjusted blankets to ensure both warmth and camouflage. Every action was calculated, deliberate, and essential for survival. Hours passed slowly, each minute stretching like an eternity. The storm outside had left the town eerily silent, and even the distant sounds of wildlife seemed muted under the heavy snow. Laura knew that the Hells Angels could return at any moment, but she also recognized that they had likely moved on, at least temporarily. She used this window to prepare for the eventual arrival of rescuers. She cleared pathways, stacked blankets for warmth, and arranged the children's sleeping area so that it would be easy to evacuate them quickly if needed. Her planning was careful, efficient, and thoughtful, reflecting a mind sharpened by both fear and determination. Finally, a distant sound broke the silence, the unmistakable whine of sirens cutting through the night air. Laura's heart leapt. Help was on the way. She whispered urgently to the children, "Emma, Luke, stay close to me. We're going to be okay. The nice people are coming to help us." The children's eyes widened in relief, their small hands grasping hers tightly. Laura could feel their trust and love, a powerful reminder of why she had endured everything: the blizzard, the fear, and the threat outside. They had survived because of her courage and quick thinking, and now rescue was finally within reach. The sirens grew louder, and soon, headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the snow-covered street outside. Laura carefully opened a small window to signal the rescuers without drawing unnecessary attention. Moments later, the front door was cautiously approached by police officers and emergency personnel, their presence a beacon of safety in a night that had seemed endless. Laura guided her children toward the door, wrapping them tightly in blankets and holding them close. The officers quickly assessed the situation, noting the barricades, the improvised defenses, and the evident exhaustion of the small family. They assured Laura that she and her children were safe, and that additional help was on the way. As rescuers worked to clear the snow and ensure that the street was safe, Laura allowed herself a rare moment of relief. She knelt beside her children, brushing snowflakes from their hair and smiling through tears. "We made it, my loves," she whispered. Emma hugged her tightly, whispering, "I knew you would keep us safe, Mommy." Luke echoed her words, his small voice filled with both awe and gratitude. In that moment, the fear and exhaustion melted away, replaced by a profound sense of accomplishment and love. Neighbors began emerging from their homes, some helping with shoveling snow, others checking on friends and family. Laura watched as the town slowly came back to life, a sense of community and resilience spreading through the streets. People shared stories of survival, of courage, and of the unyielding human spirit that had carried them through the storm. Laura's story, though personal, became part of the larger narrative of the town, a testament to bravery, quick thinking, and the extraordinary lengths one mother went to protect her children. Even as the immediate threat of the bikers had passed, Laura remained vigilant. She knew that danger could return, but she also knew that she had done everything possible to protect her children. Her preparedness, resourcefulness, and unwavering courage had created a safe haven in a world that had briefly turned chaotic and threatening. Each small action, from barricading doors to improvising blankets, had contributed to a victory that was as much about love as it was about survival. The night eventually gave way to morning, and with it came sunlight reflecting off the snow in a dazzling display. Pine Ridge was still buried under a thick blanket of white, but there was a sense of calm, a feeling that life could continue despite the challenges. Laura, Emma, and Luke stepped outside with the rescuers, breathing in the crisp air and feeling the warmth of safety. The children laughed softly as they stepped on fresh snow, their innocence and resilience a powerful reminder of why their mother had endured so much. Authorities reassured Laura that the town was now secure and that the bikers had left the area. They praised her bravery and resourcefulness, noting that her quick thinking had kept the children safe during both the storm and the human threat that followed. While Laura humbly accepted the praise, she knew that the true reward was seeing her children safe, healthy, and smiling. Every shiver, every moment of fear, every action she had taken now felt worth it. As the day progressed, neighbors came by to offer warm drinks, blankets, and words of gratitude. The community, having endured the storm and the chaos, now rallied around Laura and her children, recognizing the courage it took to face danger head-on while protecting the most vulnerable. Laura shared her story quietly, emphasizing the importance of preparation, vigilance, and calm thinking in the face of uncertainty. She wanted others to learn from her experience, to understand that courage is often quiet, persistent, and rooted in love. Throughout the day, Laura reflected on the past events. The blizzard had tested her endurance, the bikers had tested her courage, and through it all, she had discovered a strength she had never imagined. She realized that survival was not only about physical resilience, but also about mental fortitude, resourcefulness, and unwavering love. Her children's trust and reliance on her had been the driving force behind every decision she made, every layer of blanket she wrapped, and every barricade she constructed. By evening, the town had begun returning to normal. Snow was shoveled, streets cleared, and power restored. Life in Pine Ridge slowly resumed, but the memory of the storm and the events that followed remained vivid. Laura and her children were now safe, but the experience had left a lasting impression, not of fear, but of courage, resourcefulness, and the extraordinary bond between a mother and her children. As night fell once more, Laura tucked Emma and Luke into bed, their small bodies safe and warm. She sat beside them holding their hands and whispered softly, "We made it. You are safe now. Mommy will always protect you." The children drifted to sleep, their trust in their mother unwavering, and Laura finally allowed herself a moment to rest. She had endured storms, fear, and uncertainty, and had emerged victorious, not because danger had vanished, but because she had faced it with courage, determination, and love. In the days that followed, Laura's story spread through Pine Ridge. Neighbors spoke of her bravery in hushed, amazed tones. The tale of a mother who had kept her children safe during the blizzard, while also outsmarting a potential threat, became a testament to the extraordinary lengths one person can go to protect those they love. It was a story of survival, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between parent and child, a story that would inspire others for years to come. Laura herself remained humble, focusing on the everyday joys of life with her children. She watched Emma and Luke play in the snow, laughed at their games, and felt an unshakable sense of pride and relief. The storm and the human threat had tested her in unimaginable ways, but she had proven that love, courage, and determination could overcome even the harshest challenges. The blizzard was over, the town was safe, and Laura's children were alive, warm, and smiling, proof that ordinary people driven by extraordinary love can achieve the impossible.